Hello and welcome to the Salzburgring in Austria. This is Mark James in the commentary box this weekend, welcoming you to the first of our live stream sessions, Free Practice 1, for the next half an hour or so, starting at 10 o'clock local time. This is the first official chance for the 23 entrants in this weekend's TCR International Series races to take a look at the Salzburgring track. There were, of course, if you were watching on social media yesterday, 2 test sessions. Not all cars took part, but the 2 free practice sessions this morning should see all 23 cars take to the track. And I say all 23 cars because there is a bit of a story. Hello. As Pepe Oriola says good morning, there is James Nash.
Good guy, but a bit pushy.
Ferenc Fixe. We'll be talking about him a little bit later on, but let's have a look at this Salzburgring circuit. One of the most picturesque tracks the TCR International Series visits. 4.24 kilometers long, nestling in this wooded valley, a very steep-sided valley. And as you can see there, 2 straights. The Red Bull Bridge just to the right of your screen, the start and finish straights. The track then heads away from the shot, down to the woods around the Nockstein curve, the 180-degree bend at the bottom end of the circuit. And then another long back straight, a couple of very easy turns at turns 7 and 8, and then the long square right-hander at the Ostschleife before the 180-degree Fahrerlager curve gets us into the chicane and then back onto the start-finish straight. Lots of new drivers, new names, some new cars to see this weekend. You saw there Grégoire de Moustier, the 26-year-old Frenchman, joining DG Sport Competition, replacing Pierre-Yves Cortals, that was with us for the first 4 events of the season. It'll be de Moustier who makes the move across from the Touring Car World Series, joining Matto Homola in the Opel Astras. But de Moustier, experienced in touring cars, and replacing Pilou, who did say at the beginning of the year he wasn't sure how many rounds he would compete in. But let's confirm for you the full entry list. 23 entrants from 14 nationalities. Surprise, surprise, there is Stefano Camini with the number 1 on his door. 2-time TCR International Series champion. And at the bottom of your screen there, Dan Lloyd, car 17, another new face, another new name in the International Series. We'll see Dan Lloyd in this session. Quickest in the test, the second test yesterday afternoon in one of the Lukoil Craft Bamboo cars. And you see there in the mid-30s a few names new to the series. There is de Moustier in car 66, the Opel, teammate of Matto Homola, and then the familiar car 74 of Pepe Oriola. There's another one of the new names on his home event, Thomas Jäger in another of the Opel Astras. Thomas, Austrian, but never having driven at the Salzburgring before. Also not very familiar with front-wheel drive cars, and so using yesterday's sessions to get acquainted with the track. Likes it very much. Kept saying it was very pretty, and how much he enjoyed the pace. But there are all sorts of issues with this track, not least of which is the wear to the front left tyre. Gianni Morbidelli there in one of the West Coast Racing Volkswagen Golfs. He was one of a number of drivers yesterday to have a problem with punctures, as was Jean-Carl Vernet in one of the Leopard Volkswagens. It's the front left tyre that gets all the abuse, because at the end of the 2 long straights, there are 2 long right-hand bends. The Nockstein at the western end of the circuit, the Ostschleife, surprisingly enough, at the east, and then this 180-degree Fahrerlager curve around the back of the support paddock. Giacomo Altoe in the second of the West Coast cars. And already quite a few spectators are taking their seats, are ready for today's 2 free practice sessions and then qualifying this afternoon, and then 2 15-lap races tomorrow. And what is going to happen to tyres, I wonder? You saw a moment or two ago, the temperatures today aren't that high. There is a threat of rain. Rain is forecast in about an hour's time. And you may recall that last year, the second race was extremely wet. And it was Jean Calvinet who took advantage of the conditions. You see on the right side of your screen there, the damp track. The start-finish straight described officially as wet. And so drivers advised to be cautious. We had rain overnight. There have been some sessions on track this morning. One of the support race categories, the Hungarian Suzukis, have been out. And there, the two most experienced of the Lukoil Craft Bamboo drivers. Just as I say that, Pepe Oriola gets it sideways. Oriola, the runner-up to Camini in 2015. James Nash, his teammate, runner-up to Camini in 2016. And Dan Lloyd there in the third car, having moved across from the British Touring Car Championship. It's been quite an eventful week for Dan, and I dare say we'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit later in the session. So there then is James Nash, one of 3 British drivers in the International Series this weekend, along with his teammate Dan Lloyd and Rob Huff, who returns after missing the previous event in Monza because of other commitments. And that's how I suspect it'll be for the remainder of the season. Nash, of course, signed up for the whole season. Huff brought in to support Jean Calvinet's bid for the driver's title this year. And Dan Lloyd, I suspect if you ask him, he'd be the first to tell you how surprised he was at having the call-up to the team. Let's focus then on the 2-time TCR International Series champion at the back of your shot there, Stefano Camini in the Come To You Racing Audi RS3 LMS. Now, in theory, the Salzburgring circuit should favour the Audis. The 3-box design with the aerodynamics certainly showed in Monza that even with all the success ballast, Camini taking his second race win of the year in Monza, and here, in theory, the aero should work in favour of the Audis. Just getting it slightly sideways around the Nockstein as they head up this long, long back straight. Not completely straight, and it's also deceptive. You can see the change in elevation there. It is quite a climb uphill as they go past the back of the paddock. You can just see the trucks there. And then it's the section that they're just coming into now, which is potentially the most difficult. That turn there is where, is where Attila Tassi had a huge accident yesterday. We were able to see the CCTV images of the car going off through the gravel, a very hard impact with the Armco, which brought out the red flags. And Camini, don't know what happened there, whether he just got it wrong on the slightly slippery track, but Camini limping through the gravel, and off he goes again. Not coming in though. So we're starting to see times. James Nash quickest so far with a 1:31.992. Times should be in the 1:27s, 1:26s possibly, depending on track temperatures. Let's just take a look at that again as Camini just gets it wrong. And no, there was no way he was going to make the right-hander through the chicane, the second part of the left-right-left chicane that gets the cars back onto the start-finish straight. British drivers 1 and 2 then at the moment. Nash from Huff, Jean Calvinet third ahead of Ferenc Fitzer. Now there's the Subaru. We haven't seen that for a while. In fact, we haven't seen the car at all this season. Luigi Ferrara, who drove the car on several occasions last year. Top Run Motorsport having all sorts of reliability issues with the car in the 2 seasons that it's run in the International Series. They chose to miss the races so far this year. They had a run at Adria a week or so ago and said that they were much happier, no issues with the car, and reasonably quick times. And so they've chosen to reappear here in Salzburgring. And when I asked the team last night, are you in for the remainder of the season? There was a kind of, let's see what happens this weekend kind of attitude. So possibly using the Salzburgring weekend as something of a test. It may well be that the Subaru is with us for more than this, just this one race weekend. But the other option for them is the TCR Italy series, where the blue car that they brought along this weekend is their original car. They also have a white car, you may remember, from last season. And so both those cars may appear in TCR Italy. There is Thomas Jaeger. We saw him earlier. Oh, just getting it wrong again through the chicane like Comini did. It may well be that the entry there is quite slippery this morning because of the overnight rain. Jaeger so far 9th quickest with a 1:33. The times, though, starting to tumble. James Nash on a 1:28.7. Huff 3/10 down, a 1:29.1. Then it's Fitzer, Matto Homola, Jean-Carl Vernet, Stian Paulsen, Frederick Vervisch in the second of the Come To You Audis. Then Jens Reno Muller, as Vervisch goes quickest. So Vervisch beaten immediately by James Nash, who's the first driver to break the 1:28 barrier this morning. James Nash on a 1:27.933. Vernet goes quicker still, a 1:27.8. And so as the line is drying, times are tumbling. So it's Vernet now from Nash, Vervisch, Huff, Fitzer, Homola, Paulsen and Moller. As Comini goes 4th quickest. So both of the Come To You Audis, 3rd and 4th now. Looking at Thomas Jaeger outside the top 10 at the moment. 11th in the red, white and blue Opel. Now at the moment, both of the West Coast cars are way down. Morbidelli and Altoe. Morbidelli 16th, Altoe 17th. And unlike the Leopard team, the West Coast team really haven't got to grips with those Volkswagens. Leopard, remember, ran the cars last year, although both the cars for this year are brand new. And West Coast have made the switch from the Hondas to the Volkswagens and just really still struggling to get their setup and the cars working properly. But Vernet and Rob Huff running together. You'll remember that in Spa, there was that brilliant maneuver from Vernet, the two of them almost telepathic, where Huff was leading, Vernet 3rd, and Huff sensed the moment beautifully, backed off. I think it was Ben Lessen who was stuck behind Huff, and Vernet just cruised past the two of them as Dusan Borkovic gets it sideways in the Alfa Romeo. Returning to the series again this weekend after missing Monza is Duncan Indy in the Icarus Motorsports Seat. The car missing Monza because they've switched from the DSG gearbox, the production-based gearbox, into the racing sequential box. And Duncan telling me yesterday that the car now feels completely different. He's got a lot more confidence in the car, and he said it feels more aggressive with the gear changes. 17th quickest so far, but out he goes as we look at Matto Homola. 5th quickest so far with a lap time of 1:27.442. 8/10 covering the top 10 at the moment from Huff, who's now quickest, down to Jens Relo Muller. Morbidelli going 10th quickest, just as I say that. So Homola's Opel, one of 3 here in the Salzburgring this weekend. Of the 23, oh, that is Fitzer. And that has got to be a yellow flag, if not red. Fitzer having gone off at almost the same place as Tashi yesterday. Fitzer out of the car. Now, is there a replay? And holding his back, that potentially is a big shunt. And indeed, Fitzer having gone off slightly before the position, and indeed, the red flags are out. The medical and recovery teams will attend to Fitzer and the car. So just over 10 minutes into the session, and the red flag coming out for the Seat Leon of Ferenc Fitzer. You can see the damage to the tyre barrier there. He's bounced back off, but unlike Tashi yesterday, not rolling the car. But you do have to wonder how much work is going to be involved to get that car ready for qualifying, if at all possible. Everybody back in then. And let's just look at the times before the red flags came out. Nash quickest with a 1:26.9, the only driver to break the 1:27 barrier. Then Vervish, Huff, Fitzer, Vernay, Hommler. 7th is Comini. 8th, Stian Paulsen. Then Thomas Jaeger. Gianni Morbidelli, 10th. Jens Renaud Muller, 11th. Roberto Colciago, 12th. Then Gregoire de Moustier, making his TCR debut. David Kajaya in the Alpha is 14th. Enrico Bettera, another of the new names on the entry list, 15th. Luigi Ferrara in the Subaru, 16th. Then Duncan Indy, Dusan Borkovic, Dan Lloyd in the Lukoil Craft Bamboo car, 19th. Giacomo Altoe, 20th. Oriola, 21st. Tashi is on the timing screens, but there he is. And that gives us time to talk about this amazing recovery operation that happened overnight. If you were following the social media streams, you'll have seen the CCTV images of the car in this huge crash yesterday, hitting the barriers at the Ostschleife, rolling over, and the car too badly damaged to repair. And so a phone call to Yas Motorsport in Italy, who build the Hondas, late yesterday afternoon, and an overnight dash, a 600-kilometer drive by two of the Yas Motorsport crew, brought a brand new car from Italy to the Salzburgring. They arrived at a little after 4 a.m. this morning. In fact, let's have a look at what happened yesterday. Now, that is the CCTV image of Tashi going off. You see the car rolling there and coming to a halt on the track. And really, there was no way they could rebuild that. So that is a brand new car. At 4 o'clock this morning, that was completely white and came off a truck from Yas in Italy. And when I was in the garage an hour or so ago, they were just finishing the stickers, the logos going on the car. Now, because effectively it's an engine change, if you think about it, it's a brand new car, and so Tashi will start from the back of the grid, but only for race 1. So if he can qualify P10, P9 this afternoon, because of the reversed grid, he will start potentially pole or on the front row of the grid for race 2, and wouldn't that be a fairy tale ending to the weekend? Very similar to the story that we saw in Thailand last year with James Nash, a big crash, and on that occasion the team rebuilt the car, and in order to repay them, Nash finished on the podium in race 1 and then won race 2. Now, wouldn't it be an amazing story if Attila Tashi can qualify P9, P10 this afternoon, start on the front row of the grid for race 2 tomorrow, and thank the team for doing that, and thank the Yas guys for their all-night drive from Italy. I hope the guys are in a hotel somewhere and getting their heads down at the moment. And there's the message from race control then. The session will be extended So instead of a 10:30 finish, it's being extended to 10:40. But obviously that will depend, the amount of time left on track will depend on how quickly the recovery crews can get Fitz's car on a flatbed lorry and back into the paddock. The car already up in the air. So 3 things going on. Obviously the medical team that you see there just checking over Ferenc, make sure he's okay, and that's the priority always in these situations. But the car being recovered back to the pits to see if the team can do anything about it. And the clear up, obviously the gravel spilt on the track. There is Pepe Oriola. Obviously no need to sit and wait in the car. He'll get plenty of notice that the session will restart, if indeed it will. And that's the kind of backdrop we have to the weekend's action. I did say that the Salzburgring is the most picturesque circuit of the entire TCR International season. You can see there, looking down the pit lane, the rock face that looms over the circuit at the western end. And you get a sense there of this steep valley that the circuit sits in. And the bonus is at the eastern end, there's a large banking, which is a natural amphitheater for spectators to sit and watch the action. So Fitz's car, and there we are. That little restaurant with the grandstand, I suppose you can call it, out front, just overlooks the Fahrerlager curve. We went up there to take a look last year, and it's almost like watching a racing set, like a sort of scale extric. It's all just in the valley below you, and you can see right the way from turn 8 round to the entrance into the chicane at turn 13. Getting ready for tomorrow's spectators. Making sure they've got short grass to sit on. Forecast for tomorrow is dry. It was dry yesterday. As I said earlier, there is the threat of rain this morning, but then brightening up this afternoon. But all the forecasts for tomorrow are saying glorious sunshine, something like 75 degrees tomorrow. And so all being well, we won't see a repeat of last year, that torrential rain that fell just before race 2. Kajaya then, first race winner of the season in the G-Force Alfa Romeo. Took pole position at his home race in Georgia, then won race 1. His teammate, Dusan Borkovic, won race 2 in round 2 at Bahrain. And like the Audis, the Alfa Romeo expected to do well here in the Salzburgring. Not so much for the aero. Borkovic telling me yesterday that the aero's not so good here, but the sheer power, everybody agrees that the Alfa Romeo engine is one of the strongest. And so these 2 long straights, the start-finish straight and the back straight, that passes the rear of the paddock, should be to the Alfa's liking. Ooh. Now that we've seen the other side of that car, I'm not actually sure that that is repairable ahead of qualifying this afternoon. So that would suggest an impact with the tyres on the driver's side, which would also confirm why Fitzer was holding his back as he walked away from the car. So was always going to start from the back of the grid for race 1 for a similar reason, actually, to Tashi, in that the team have swapped cars. And So drivers getting back into their cars. Let's just recap then the action that we did see in that first 10-minute section. Kamini just getting the car just a little bit squirrely under braking for the chicane, taking to the gravel then across the grass, but no damage done. Kamini 7th quickest before the red flags came. There is Borkovic. Thomas Jaeger also getting it. Nope, that wasn't the sequence I thought it was going to be. But the Audis, both in the top 7. Vavish P2, Kamini P7. There is Ferrara, P16 in the Subaru. And I suspect they will be happy for just an incident-free run this weekend. Their issues in the past have been, well, gearbox, cooling. Yeah, the scuff marks right the way down the side. Rear wheel at an angle. And the impact appears to have been on the driver's door, which has popped the front wing. So what will Zengo be able to do to that car, if anything? And of course, more importantly, we need to check that Fitzer's okay. There's no way that car will come out for FP2, but can he make qualifying? Both Fitzer and the car. No, I don't think we catch the accident. I think we catch the aftermath, yes. So Fitzer out of the car quite quickly. But as you saw, holding his back as he walked away. So I would hope he's already on the way to the medical center. Indeed, the medical crews have left the scene. And so it's just now a case of rebuilding the tire barriers there on the left to ensure the safety of anybody else going off at that point. The last message we had from race control was that the session would be extended to end at 10:40. It's 10:24 now. So assuming that the barrier can be repaired in the next 5 minutes or so, that will leave everybody about 10 minutes of this first free practice session. And the car that didn't take part in the test yesterday was Luigi Ferrari in the Subaru. And you do wonder if they're now thinking maybe we should have taken part in at least one of the test sessions just to get some idea of how the car will go here at the Salzburgring. Enrico Bettera in that bright yellow Audi RS3 LMS. "45 years of age is Bettera, currently 10th in TCR Italy. So this is possibly a one-off for him. I'm not sure if we'll see him next weekend at the Hungaroring, if he is thinking about the TCR Europe trophy later in the year. That, remember, is why Stian Paulsen and Jens Renaud Moller are here, getting the points necessary to qualify for that event at Adria in October. And that gentleman there is Romano, our resident photographer. So if you see the photographs uploaded to social media, Romano is the man responsible with his team, but it's not often that we actually see the man himself. And Morbidelli, P10 at the moment. Giacomo Altoe in the other West Coast car, P20. A little way from Gianni. Now, what has the team been able to do here? Can they get that car performing this weekend? I know spirits in the team are fairly down, but it's one of those teams that have always been very welcoming, very friendly, and that you do feel for them when things aren't going their way. So the tyre barriers more or less back in place. Just another nudge from the forklift, hopefully. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Salzburgring in Austria. This is Free Practice 1, our first live stream session of the weekend. And as you see there at the top of your screen, the red flags stopped the session after a little over 10 minutes after an accident involving the Seat Leon of Ferenc Fizer. A big collision at the Ostschleife going into turn 9 brought out the red flags. Fizer walked away from the car but was clutching his back, and so he's been taken to the medical center for a check. The car is back in the pits, and we're just now waiting for repairs to be carried out to the tyre barrier before the session can resume. The session was meant to finish in around 3 minutes' time at 10:30, but race director and the stewards have agreed that it'll extend to 10:40. And there is Dusan Borkovic. And that amazing overtaking maneuver here last year where Borkovic slingshotted his way past 2 cars into turn 1, saw the gap and went for it. A gutsy move, I think you'll agree, if you watch it back. Now, can he do that kind of thing again this year? Different car, of course. He was in the Seat last year, one of the B3 Racing Seat Leons, having switched to the GE Force Alfa Romeo this year. The deftest of touches from the forklift driver, just nudging that tyre barrier back in place. There is our championship leader, winner of race 2 here in Austria last year, Jean-Carl Vernet. In his rookie season last year, and was Stefano Camini's teammate. This year, all changed. Camini's moved on. Vernet is definitely number 1 at Leopard, and he's got former world champion Rob Huff alongside him to support his bid for the driver's title. A 16-point lead Vernet has arriving here in Austria. What can he do this weekend? In terms of success ballast, we've not really talked about that. The heaviest car in terms of success ballast this weekend is the Honda of Roberto Colciago in the Mira Racing Civic, 30 kilos of success ballast, 20 kilos for Frederick Vervisch in the Audi, and 10 for his teammate Stefano Camini. So Vernet is ballast free. Can that man, Rob Huff, help Jean-Carl to another large points haul in Austria this weekend? Should also be pointed out that we've 2 back-to-back races. Salzburgring this weekend, Hungaroring in Budapest next weekend. And so the pressure is on to get everything right, because if you have a problem this weekend, as Stian Paulsen discovered in the gap, similar gap 1 week between Spa and Monza, there's not much time to get things sorted out. A large crowd, possibly the biggest of the season, excepting the F1 races, expected at the Hungaroring next weekend. All sorts of rumours and counter-rumours floating around about the cars we should expect to see and some of the drivers we expect to see next weekend. I think that'll all become clear in the coming days once the Salzburgring race weekend is done and dusted. I think hopes are still high that we will get some more action in this session, but it may just be a little 5-minute thrash around. There is James Nash. Just like his teammate Pepe Oriola, really needs a good result this weekend. Nash so far hasn't been able to repeat the kind of form that saw him finish as runner-up to Stefano Camini last year. Badly needs a victory, as does Oriola. You'll recall Oriola leading race 1 here last year, retired with 1 lap to go with an engine problem, and then couldn't start race 2. And there was that shot of Oriola looking dejected, to put it mildly, looking down the pit lane. And that was, he said to us yesterday, where he thought his championship bid fell apart last year. Had he won race 1 and then a decent haul of points in race 2, he'd have been right up there with Stefano Camini going into the second half of the season. Let's just look ahead at the timings then as we look at Pepe Oriola's car. Free practice 2 at 12 o'clock Central European time, 10 o'clock GMT, and then qualifying, the usual 2-part session begins at 3 o'clock local time, 1 o'clock GMT, and both those sessions live streamed. So you can follow the action on Facebook, on YouTube, or on the TCR websites. And then tomorrow, 2 races back-to-back. Race 1 at 1:05 local time, and race 2 at 2:35 local time. And again, they will be streamed live, but also you'll be able to catch them potentially on your local TV station, should they be running TCR. I know some stations like Motors TV in Europe run some of the races delayed, but you can watch them live both early, mid-afternoon tomorrow. Now there is Dan Lloyd's car. I mentioned Dan earlier, right at the beginning of the session. Dan in his mid-20s, British touring car racer until, well, really last weekend. He made the decision to pull out of the British Touring Car Championship, and little did he know that it coincided with the decision by Ugo Valente to retire from, well, all racing with immediate effect, which left Lukoil Craft Bamboo with a problem, a third car with no driver. And now Dan has driven for Craft Bamboo in GT Asia when he partnered Daryl O'Young, I think it was. And so the team know him, he knows the team. And so earlier this week, he got a phone call to say, would you like to drive our car in the TCR International Series? And he jumped at the chance. And yesterday, Pepe Oriola was quickest in the first test session. The second session, which was cut short because of Tashi's accident, was it was Dan Lloyd's turn to be quickest. So from the earliest indications this weekend, Lukoil Craft Bamboo, quickest in both the test sessions. What can they do today and tomorrow? There is Frederic Vervisch, another driver looking for his first win of the year. But what can Dan Lloyd do? One of his strengths, he was telling me, is that he can get into a car and make it work quite quickly. Well, he can certainly do that from what we saw yesterday. But what can he do in qualifying today and in the races tomorrow? Repairs completed then. Something like 5 minutes, potentially. It's just gone 10:35. Can the session restart? And will there be any meaningful running in about the 4 minutes or so that could happen? Mechanics standing out, so they're expecting clearly to get their drivers out on track. Always the comedian, Stefano Camini. So our thanks to the marshals and to the rescue and medical crews for their swift work as the recovery crew come back into their standby position at the chicane. Hopefully that will mean that race director Tony Whittaker can restart proceedings. I'm still waiting for a message to say if and when the session will resume. It's already nearly 10:37. The plan was to run it until 10:40, but will that have changed? We're looking for the lights at the end of the pit lane to turn green, which will, in theory, give us about 3 minutes of the session remaining. Restart at 10:38, we're now being told. So on our timing screens, the message coming up, restart at 10:38, which is in just under 1 minute's time. Now that will only give them a lap or so. So I'm actually wondering whether they're going to extend the session even further, possibly until 10:45, but that's a decision that's not yet been flashed up. So a little over 30 seconds then until this first free practice session gets back underway. And just to remind you that quickest so far is James Nash in the Seat Leon, Frederick Vervisch second, Robert Huff third, and then before his accident was Ferenc Fitzer in the Seat, Jean-Carl Venet P5, Mato Homola P6, Comini 7th, Paulsen 8th, Jaeger 9th, and Gianni Morbidelli 10th. 3 or 4 seconds then until those lights turn green. There they go. So 2 minutes or thereabouts of this session remaining. And indeed, the decision has been made to extend the session further. So instead of ending at 10:40, it'll now end at 10:55. So 25 minutes longer than planned. So at least they get some meaningful lap time in this free practice session. That should flash up on your screen very shortly, but the session is now back underway. And so they will get very nearly the full half hour. So the two come to you Audis running together then. Slipstreaming potentially will be vital in qualifying. And so is that what the two come to you drivers have decided to practice? The masters of the slipstream, Lucas Craft Bamboo, that would suggest what they're doing, and indeed so would the Leopard Volkswagens running together. Not the case for Kajaya, no sign of Dusan Borkovic. Behind Kajaya, I think, was the Honda of Roberto Colciago, or indeed has, no, there indeed is Colciago up ahead, so he's got past him. Judging by social media reaction, David Kajaya, Data, is easily the most popular on social media, judging by the number of times we do Facebook live sessions from paddocks and so forth with people asking questions. So an awful lot of people from Georgia we'll be watching what Kajaya can do this weekend. Kajaya at the moment P14, James Nash P1, and Nash's time a 1:26.979. You can see there a slight heat haze starting to come off the track, so the track, I would have thought, now virtually dry, apart from the odd occasion where the trees are casting shadows. Will we get rain ahead of FP2, I wonder? So, everybody out of the pits. And just as I was saying that the Lukoil Craft Bamboo cars would potentially be running together to practice the aerodynamic tow, there is Nash running on his own. Oriola, you see there, 2 green lozenges. Oriola goes P10, so 3 good sectors for him. Vernet has put a gold sector in, so that's quickest of the entire session. And who else is on a charge? I'll need to have a chat with the timing guys, because at the side of your screen there, you see NAS, Nash, VER for Vervish, but then in P5 is VER for Vernet. So let's see if we can work that out. So you and I have got a chance of working out what's going on. So there is Borkovic, I mentioned earlier. Stian Paulsen in the Seat behind him. Now, Oriola, gold in Sector 1, on his own, nobody in front. Green in Sector 2, so potentially Oriola on course for the fastest lap in this first free practice session. We'll follow him through Sector 3. He goes round the Fahrerlager curve, this tightening 180-degree bend. Now the left-hander at turn 11 into the chicane. The right-hander, and then another left gets us back onto the start-finish straight. He goes across the start-finish line. There it is up ahead. No, not enough. P7 he goes. Nash still quickest. Vernet goes second quickest, dropping Vervish to third. Huff now fourth. Colciago up to fifth. Colciago, remember, carrying 30 kilos of success ballast. The top 15, covered by 1 second. So from James Nash down to Duncan Indy 16th is only just a whisker over a second. That's how tight things are. That's how close the racing should be this weekend. Still only one driver to break that 1:27 barrier. That's James Nash. But David Kajaya now goes gold in Sector 1. Kajaya currently P15. Thomas Jaeger goes gold. As Dan Lloyd improves to 12th with a 1:27.677. Kajaya still on a charge, clearly, as is Jaeger. So keep an eye on these two. David Kajaya in the Alfa Romeo, Thomas Jaeger in the Opel Astra. As Kajaya comes through the chicane, through the left-hander, back onto the start-finish straight. And across the line now. And as we were watching that, Kamini has gone quickest on a 1:26.942. Jaeger, a 1:26.858, quickest of all. So Thomas Jaeger, the Austrian driver in the Opel Astra, quickest so far, ahead of Stefano Kamini, then James Nash, Matto Homola, Jean-Carl Vernet, Gregoire de Moustier, 6th, Jens Renzo Moller Renault Muller, excuse me, P7. Frederick Vervish, 8th. Rob Huff, 9th. Roberto Colciago now 10th. And the top 10 covered as Mato Homola goes quickest, a 1:28.846. So just over 100ths of a second quicker than Jaeger. So Opel Astra's 1 and 2 at the moment. And I was just going to say, 0.4 of a second cover the first 11 places. So Homola then, quickest so far. Thomas Jaeger. Comini, 2 gold lozenges, but he's in traffic, so that third sector is not going to help him through the chicane. And what can Comini do? Currently P3. No, indeed, Comini goes quickest despite catching Pepe Oriola. Stefano Comini, a 1:26.608. So Comini goes fastest, ahead of Homola, Jaeger, Venet, Oriola, Colciago, Dan Lloyd, James Nash, de Moustier, as Giacomo Altoe goes P2. What was I saying about West Coast having all sorts of problems? Giacomo Altoe, have they sorted that car out? A 1:26.793 from 16-year-old Giacomo Altoe in the Volkswagen. Brilliant performance from him. Now that is, I would have said, just what West Coast Racing need. There are the two cars. The older, far more experienced Gianni Morbidelli. Currently P19 Morbidelli, 1:27. So despite the fact that he's 19th, he's only 7/10 off Comini's quickest time. Now it looks like these two are practicing their toe back up the long back straight. There is Dan Lloyd into the pits. Dan Lloyd, P8 at the moment with a 1:26.9. 0.3 just over, slower than Comini. But you have to say that's a really good job from Lloyd. First time in the TCR car, first time in Salzburgring, as Oriola just takes a look up the inside of Vervish, but decides better of it. Grégoire de Moustier in the Opel, now P2. So it's Comini from de Moustier, from Altoe, Homola, Jaeger. So out of the top 5, 3 are Opel Astras. That's not what we were expecting here, but Opel will be delighted. Opel Motorsport come to each race to support their customers, and up until now, the only customer has been DG Sport Competition in the International Series, but Kissling are running the red, white and blue Opel of Thomas Jaeger. Colciago, green in Sector 1, Tashi green in Sectors 1 and 2. There is Colciago. Tashi, remember, in the very different logo with sponsors' logos down both sides of the car. Now, de Moustier has gone quickest of all in Sector 2, so de Moustier on a charge. His best sector time in 1, best Sector 2 time of all, as Colciago goes P2 with the maximum success ballast, remember. So Comini still quickest. De Moustier not managing to improve his position. So Comini quickest, then it's Colciago, then de Moustier, Altoe, Homola and Jaeger in the 2 Opels, then Venet, James Nash and Pepe Oriola, P8 and P9, and then Dan Lloyd, P10. So the 3 Lukoil Craft Bamboo cars, 8th, 9th and 10th. Venet, best sector time in 1. He's currently 7th. And the top 19 cars covered by just 0.6 of a second. There is Tashi, as I was saying, a very different logo. Venet, quickest again in Sector 2, as Borkovic goes quickest. Borkovic, a 1:26.356, 0.2 quicker than Comini. And what can Tashi do? Currently 20th. just over a second slower than Borkovic's time. So Altoe set his best Sector 1 time. That's Huff's car. Huff's new race engineer, Nigel Clyde, stood at the back of that shot. Venet, P2, behind Borkovic. Just under 5 minutes remaining. Adjustments to the rear wing on Huff's car. Borkovic then quickest from Jean-Carl Venet, from Comini, Colciago, de Moustier, Pepe Oriola now up to 6th, Altoe 7th, Hommler 8th, Jaeger 9th. That means Nash and Lloyd have dropped to 10th and 11th. Jens Renaud Moller is 12th, Paulsen 13th, Duncan Indy 14th, Kajaya 15th, Vervish 16th, then it's Huff, Morbidelli, Fitzer, who of course won't take any further part in this session, and Tashi P20. So thumbs up for Rob Huff. Out he goes with 3 minutes 45 or so of the session remaining. Borkovic still quickest so far. Kajaya, there he is, quickest of all in Sector 1. Not so good Sector 2. What's he doing in Sector 3? He's in the chicane. This is the left-hander, back onto the start-finish straight. Nope, excuse me, misread it. There's the right-hander, now the left-hander onto the start-finish straight. And so at the end of his lap, Kajaya crosses the start-finish line. Up to 14th is Kajaya, not able to match the pace of his teammate. Borkovic just under 2/10 ahead of Jean-Carl Venet. And Borkovic already on a flyer on his next lap. Quickest of all in Sector 1. Colciago. And again, Borkovic quickest of all in Sector 2. So Borkovic on course to improve on that quickest time. 1:26.356 so far. He's in Sector 3. There he is. Expecting to be quick here, but not entirely convinced because of he reckons the aero not quite as good as the Audis. Anyway, he comes onto the start-finish straight. 1:26.356. So losing it in that last sector. There's Stian Paulsen. We talked briefly in Monza a couple of weeks ago as Dan Lloyd goes P3. Best of the Lukoil Craft Bamboo cars. Paulsen we talked about briefly in Monza. The hashtag TCR DNA cropped up. Colciago, 2 gold lozenges and a green. P4 for him with a 1:26.579. And that TCR DNA hashtag, I suspect, will crop up as the year goes on. Jens Renaud Muller, quick in Sector 1, not so in Sector 2. Lloyd again, green in Sector 1. So Dan Lloyd, his first ever race weekend in the TCR International Series, doing a sterling job, getting used to that car, the series, and the track. Not so good in Sector 2, just a little squirrely under braking, as Colciago should be the man to watch. Currently P4 in the Honda, quickest of all in Sectors 1 and 2, with less than a minute of the session remaining. Oriola clearly on a charge. His best sector times in 1 and 2, currently P7. Let's see what Dan Lloyd can do as he heads up to the start-finish line. Still P3. Oriola up to P6, and Colciago improves to P2. So Borkovic still quickest then. Just over a 1/10 of a second quicker than Roberto Colciago. Jean-Carl Venet 3rd, Dan Lloyd 4th, Stefano Comini 5th, and that is Duncan Indy in the Icarus Motorsports Seat, beached in the gravel. And the red flag comes out, but the session had ticked down to a close in any case, and so that's the way that the session will end. Now, I don't know if there's if that was a collision or whether he's just beached in the gravel and it was deemed to be a dangerous position. Let's just check that. Difficult to say from that replay whether there was a collision with the barriers or whether it was just an off-track excursion and then through the gravel. Andriana Borkovic, more than happy, I suspect, with hubby's quickest time. Dusan quickest then, ahead of Roberto Colciago. Jean-Carl Venet, there is Dusan. Dan Lloyd, P4. Comini, P5, ahead of Oriola, de Moustier, Giacomo Altoe, Matteo Homola, and Thomas Jaeger. That's the top 10. And those 10 drivers covered by almost exactly half a second. And I think that was Indy being helped into one of the recovery cars. So he will get a lift back to the pits. The car will be recovered for Brian Maher and the team to sort out, ready for free practice 2. Just confirmation, looking at your timing screens, that Luigi Ferrara, well off the pace in the Subaru, 22nd. And indeed, there doesn't appear to be any damage to that Seat, so the Icarus Motorsport Seat just being recovered. You do have to wonder how much gravel that they'll have to sweep out of the car. And also, now there is Duncan. Now, I did see from the other angle, I wasn't sure if the front left-hand wheel was up into the wheel arch. So was there some kind of contact? The guys from Romeo Ferraris who built the Alfa Romeos, congratulating Dusan on that quickest time. Very difficult, if not impossible, to say exactly what's going to happen in these 2 free practice sessions because we don't know tyres, we don't know what everybody's up to, but it's a decent indicator, certainly, of how tight things are, because looking right the way down to 20th, all 20 drivers are within a second of each other. And the top 10, as I said, covered by just half a second. Wow. So, Borkovic then, quickest in this free practice 1, ahead of Colciago, Venet, Lloyd, Comini, Oriola, de Moustier, Altoe, Homola, and Jaeger. Some unfamiliar names in that leaderboard, but you do wonder what Lloyd and de Moustier can get up to. Bear in mind that they're with us for the remainder of the season. Nash P11, ahead of Muller, Paulsen, Kajaya, Indy, Vivish, Huff, Tashi, Morbidelli, and Fixer. And all being well, Fixer will get a check over at the medical center, and let's see what the car can do. And then Enrico Bettera in the Audi, and Luigi Ferrara, 21 and 22, as Dusan heads back. Job well done for him. So interesting then, 3 sessions from the 2 test sessions yesterday. Oriola quickest in one, Lloyd quickest in the other, and now it's the Alpha of Dusan Borkovic that is quickest. And there is Andriana, a hug and a kiss. Before Dusan heads in for a debrief with his engineers. Not that much time until the second free practice session, which takes place at 12 o'clock, so only an hour. So thanks for joining us from the Salzburgring for this first free practice session. We'll see you in an hour for free practice 2.